Good morning, supervisors. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly noticed. We will begin our program this morning with an invocation by Pastor Larry Ziman from Faith Community Church. Pastor, I'd call you forward. Supervisors, would you please stand?
Good morning. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve others. Thank you for the opportunity to influence a county and a people for the good. And I thank you for this assembled body here. Thank you for this opportunity to partner with them by asking your help for them and for all of us. We are so grateful for the privilege it is to occupy the space we call St. Croix County in this great state of Wisconsin, in this great nation. We simply pause to acknowledge the prosperity and the safety that we experience, which is so uncommon for so many on this planet. We give you thanks for that. Thank you too for these servants here that give of their time and their expertise, who share their lives for the greater good of the residents of this county, for the employees who serve this county so ably. We cry out for wisdom for those who oversee our judges, and our jails, and our sheriff, and those who serve in the areas of mental health, and who maintain the county and the administration that goes to support it all. Would you please give them help to serve well in these challenging days? I ask of these supervisors that you'd grant them the gift of leadership, and you'd help them not only to lead in a manner that is principled, but in a manner that is caring. That you'd help them have wisdom, not only for matters that are fiscal, but that are relational as well, knowing that they serve the people and lead in challenging days. So Lord, please, as is always the temptation in leadership, would you please deliver this body from the challenges of being self-centered and self-serving, and instead give them a heart that prospers their neighbors. And we can only do that with your help. By nature, we're selfish people, but through your help, we can love and serve and build up this county. So do this for these people, and I pray your blessing on them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Supervisors, please indicate your attendance for the roll call. Just Robert. Yep. Supervisor Scheer is not with us this morning. He did inform me of his absence. As a matter of fact, he is on a business trip out of the United States, so I guess that is an excused absence. So we are here today. Then a quorum has been established and will not be again challenged. I'm pleased to have our administrator's report, and this is our first county administrator's report. So, Pat, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to monthly reporting out to the County Board of Supervisors and giving you just a general update of the state of the operation, the organization, if there are any issues or special projects that are on the horizon. It's an opportunity for me to meet formally on a monthly basis and just provide you kind of a very high level view of where I see things and kind of give you an update on some of the activities that have been going on over the past month, and then also talk about some things that I see coming down the road. I'd like to thank the chairman. Also in my reports to the county board, I will try to adhere to the 3B principle, and that is be brief, be concise, and be seated. I've spent about 40 days on the job now since June 8th in getting to know St. Croix County, both internally as an organization and externally as a community. In introducing myself to county departments and the St. Croix County community, my decision to return to the state of Wisconsin, and more specifically to St. Croix County, has been reaffirmed. My 8 years spent in Colorado and Ohio, although were a great learning experience, having returned, I now have an even deeper appreciation for Wisconsin counties and what Wisconsin counties are trying to accomplish. We're well into the 2012 budget process. Departments are busy preparing their budget submittals, which are due August 12th in the finance department. I was told yesterday that one department has already submitted their 2012 budget, and that's the district attorney's office, and they get a gold star. Of course, the county's financial well-being is of critical importance, and it will be imperative that we justify spending priorities as we develop the 2012 budget. And that will be a task that I look forward to working on with the department heads, the administration committee, the standing committees of the board, and then ultimately the full county board in November. A critical piece of the budget, which I'll be keeping a close eye on, is in the area of employee health insurance and the expenditures for employee health insurance. We'll work with the Health Insurance Advisory Committee to recommend plan design changes to help try to reduce overall costs to employee health insurance. We'll also be taking bids on new carriers to ensure our existing plan costs are market competitive, so that we make sure that we're getting good value for county dollars that are being spent for the program. Another area I've been focusing staff resources on is in the development of a framework for discussions with the board on strategic planning. We're making progress along those lines, and we'll start a dialogue with the entire county board on August 16th in trying to identify key priorities and defining our mission, which will drive this process and lead ultimately to a management work plan with outcomes and deliverables, which will become the tool by which we measure our performance as an organization. I've also spent some time looking at how county staff and departments, how we staff our standing committees of the board. Our goal is to try to standardize how we are reporting to the committees and keep things informative and efficient for the standing committees of the board. Chairman Stanford called a meeting of committee chairs a couple weeks ago to discuss and solicit ideas from committee chairs as to how we can make sure that we are, as a staff, presenting good policy information to the committees, and then ultimately for the committees to make good policy decisions which are ultimately forwarded to the county board. We're trying to standardize that process so that amongst the various 5 standing committees that there is some consistency as to how we are reporting out as a staff to these committees. I'm also providing input into the agenda preparation process with the chairs of the committees and the staff. We're also looking at software which may assist us in document management for meeting packets. Mixed into all this, I've been able to meet with area city, village, and county administrators, some St. Croix County Township trustees, and I've traveled to Madison to meet with the Wisconsin County executives and administrators and Wisconsin Counties Association leadership. In these times of tight resources, we continue to look for ways to work together and share ideas on a statewide level. I've met with Mr. Rubin, who I think is in the room this morning, and the St. Croix County Economic Development Corporation, and toured the Wisconsin Indian Technical College with Joe Hufto. Bill and Joe and their organizations are true assets to St. Croix County. Sprinkled in with this, I've met with local service groups in Hudson and New Richmond, spent an evening on the beautiful St. Croix River with the Lower St. Croix River Management Association, and an afternoon at the St. Croix County Fair. And we also even got to welcome Governor the state of Wisconsin in Hudson in this very room. I'd like to thank the county board, department heads, and county employees for the welcome that you have extended to me as the new administrator. I look forward to a strong working relationship with the county board, with department heads, with the county employees, our workforce, and the entire St. Croix County region, local businessmen, local leaders, which I look forward to as I continue down this path, reaching out and introducing myself and working with the entire St. Croix County community. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and the County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to ask if you have any questions of me at this point before I be seated. Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
The agenda has been distributed for your review. We do have two department reports this morning, Highway and the County Surveyor, and both Tim and Brian will be available for questions for the reports, and we will deal with those right after agenda number 1. So that's the order in which we'll deal with the agenda. The consent agenda is in front of you. Chair would entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Motion from Supervisor Schrank, second from Supervisor Larson. All in favor of the approval of the consent agenda?
Are you using that?
Yes.
Roger needs to see.
Yeah. Ready? Amy, are you ready? We'll now vote. And the consent agenda is approved. We have one appointment this morning. Mary Ellen Bohl has been appointed to the LEPC. This does require county board approval. I think a voice vote is sufficient for this confirmation and approval. All in favor of the appointment of Mary Ellen Bohl to the LEPC committee will signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Carried.
Why did you feel it didn't need a motion? Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Mostly because I am going faster in my mind than what my mouth will keep up with, and so we'll back up, and if you would like to do that, Supervisor Malik, that would be appropriate.
I move the confirmation of the appointment of Mary Ellen Bohl to the Local Emergency Planning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second from Supervisor Larson. Now, all in favor of the appointment signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign, and that is carried, and she is appointed. Supervisors, you'll recall that this board, by previous resolutions, has affirmed its support for the new St. Croix River Crossing by resolution back in the 80s, again, a resolution in the late 90s, and then recently, a number of months ago, by resolution again, for the third time, we approved that support. Subsequent to that resolution, a coalition has been formed called the new River Crossing Coalition, LLC. There are people from both sides of the river that are involved in that coalition, and I have the distinct privilege, along with my colleague, board chair from Washington County, Gary Kriesel, also serving on the executive committee of that coalition. By virtue of the fact that this is a policy position that this board has taken by resolution, affirming our request of the United States Congress for a congressional exemption from the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act to permit this project moving forward, it is appropriate for us to see the progress of this coalition and an update on where that congressional request is at. Hearing was held last week, and so I'm going to call on Michael Wilhelmy, representing the coalition, for a presentation, and then he will entertain any questions from this board that may come as a result of his presentation. And I welcome Michael Wilhelmy.
I'm going to turn on the monitor right on the far right.
All right. Great. Which one is it?
Forward.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to lose it.
Okay, that's all right.
Because I'm-
Okay, very good. Well, Mr. Chairman and supervisors, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Michael Wilhelmy. I'm a resident of Stillwater, Minnesota, and serving as the executive director of the Coalition for the St. Croix River Crossing. I want to recognize Chairman Standifer, who's also a board member of our coalition, and also Mr. Bill Rubin, who is in the audience as well, and also Mr. Larry Dowell, a colleague of ours, another consultant working with our group, also in the audience today. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. With my time with you today, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, go over a very brief history of the crossing project. It will go all the way back to 1958, just the most recent time in interest of time. Also, a summary of the bridge project elements. I want to speak to you about our organizational goals and our message that we're delivering to communities all throughout the St. Croix Valley and also in Washington. An authorization update, and then an appeal to you all for help. First of all, why is it so hard to build a bridge? We've been at this for quite some time as a region. There are basically 3 federal laws that govern the construction of a new crossing over the St. Croix. First, the Transportation Act of 1966 requires minimizing harm to public parks, recreation areas, wildlife, waterfowl refuges, and historic sites. In an area as old as the St. Croix Valley, there's a lot of these that have to be dealt with. The National Historic Preservation Act requires avoiding harm and minimizing harm to historic properties. Again, a lot of historic sites in the St. Croix Valley. And then, of course, the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. A recent interpretation by the National Park Service as of last fall indicates that no new construction that would have a direct or adverse impact on a wild and scenic river can be built without a congressional exemption. So it doesn't matter the size of the project. If there's a determination that a project have anywhere in any wild and scenic river, anywhere in the United States, that it have a direct and adverse impact, it cannot be permitted by the Park Service, and only Congress can permit that. This is a map of the project area centered on Stillwater, Minnesota in the center. You can see the first box in the center is labeled a Stillwater Commercial Historic District. The bigger box around it is the Cultural Landscape District. These are both federal designations for historic sites and requiring a special historic preservation. The green and purple and gold areas you see are public parks. The other dots that you see are designated historic sites, again protected by the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. The designers of the project, you can see the B1 alternative running to the south. That is where the preferred alternative bridge location would be located. There were other, you can see labeled C, D, and E, other designs that were also considered by the stakeholder group. Recent history: in 1985, basically the MnDOT and Wisconsin DOT and the Federal Highway Administration attempted to build a bridge. They had a project, they were going forward. Land was purchased, homes were bought out in the Oak Park Heights area on the Minnesota side. They were going forward and were stopped by a lawsuit. At that point, a court determined that this project did indeed have to have special permission from the Park Service. There was a later attempt to try to broker an agreement that broke down, essentially due to bureaucratic disagreement and interest group opposition. And so, very wisely, the Federal Highway Administration, MnDOT, and Wisconsin DOT got together. They brought in a federal environmental mediator. And for over 3 years, 27 different federal, state, and local agencies and advocacy organizations met in a stakeholder mediation process to try to figure out how to build a bridge, where to put it, what size to build it, and where it should be located. This is a picture from one of their meetings. Again, they met monthly for 3 years. And this group includes everyone from the U.S. Coast Guard, the Environmental Protection Agency, Fish and Wildlife Service at the federal level, Minnesota and Wisconsin Departments of Natural Resources, historic preservation offices, cities, counties in the area, the Lift Bridge Association, the Sierra Club was a member, and other organizations. And this group got together to express their concerns and their needs with the overall goal of trying to figure out a process. This group had 3 competing goals. First, they had to build a reliable, efficient transportation infrastructure for the region. They needed to preserve the historic resources that I mentioned, and also protect the Wild and Scenic River. This process was designed, and we think it succeeded in balancing these 3 important goals. The transportation elements of the project, the stakeholders agreed that a new 4-lane crossing located away from downtown Stillwater was necessary. The location that the stakeholders chose was a bridge near the power plant and the sewage treatment plant, about a mile downriver from Stillwater. They wanted a signature bridge of a distinctive design. So this is not a typical box girder freeway bridge. This is a gorgeous bridge, and I'll show you a picture in a second. They wanted something that fit into the Wild and Scenic Riverway as best it could, and also a location least damaging to the environment and to historic resources. The project also includes safety improvements on Highway 36. For those of you who've driven into the Twin Cities through Stillwater in Oak Park Heights, some of those intersections are quite dangerous and very packed. This project, it's not just a bridge, it's also a roads project. It include improvements on 36 and 64. And this is it. This is the bridge. It's a modified cable stay bridge. It would be only the 3rd of its kind built in all of North America. Some of the other design features, in an attempt to have a narrower, thinner bridge deck, the cable stay design was chosen. And also you can see the support columns are open. And the idea was that it would, rather having a big, heavy piece of concrete in the Wild and Scenic River, they wanted to make it as light as possible on the eye. And the location, as you can see in the background there, is a Sunnyside Marina. Just to the left of there, I don't know if you can make it out, but that is a sewage treatment plant that is there, so not a Wild and Scenic River area. Here's another aerial picture from the Wisconsin side, and from here on the left you can see the L&S King plant and the coal piles. Sort of in the foreground there, center background is the prison, and you can see just exactly how it would come into from Wisconsin to Minnesota. The environmental elements of the project: significant environmental remediation and new amenities for the public to enjoy the riverway. A loop trail will be built between Minnesota and Wisconsin. There will be significant restoration of existing bluff cuts in Minnesota and Wisconsin, especially in Wisconsin, and a loop trail will be built in that area. So the loop trail will go over the existing Stillwater lift bridge, which will be converted to a pedestrian walking bridge. The loop will go over to the new bridge, and there will be a designated walkway for walking and biking, and also some observation decks built into that. It will return back on the Minnesota side, and there are some historic lumbering ruins that are there as well too, so there'll be a walking and biking path to that area, and people will be able to enjoy that as well. The old power plant, the coal barge terminal, and riverbank restoration is also part of this project, as well as protecting threatened species in the river. So the historic preservation elements include historic designation for downtown Stillwater, the commercial historic district that has been done. Also the rehabilitation and restoration of the lift bridge. The lift bridge project is both an environmental project and an historic preservation project, so it's unique in that way, and we think it'll be very unique in the park system as well nationally. And then finally, environmental and rehabilitation and historic restoration for the St. Croix Overlook site. It's an historic site that was built in the 1940s, part of the Works Progress Administration in Oak Park Heights. It's a very scenic overlook on the Minnesota side that folks enjoy. At present, the midpoint cost estimate is $633 million for the overall project. The way the state splits work out, Minnesota would pay $350 million, with Wisconsin paying $280 million. Essentially, the way the costs break down are that Minnesota and Wisconsin will share the physical costs of the bridge, the actual bridge part of this project, and also they will share the cost of the mitigation items, the environmental mitigation items, and also the historic preservation items. But on each side of the river, each state will pay for their own roadway improvements and the approaches on both sides of the river. And because on the Minnesota side, the Highway 36 improvements, it's usually more expensive to improve something that's already built than it is to build new. On the Wisconsin side, the Highway 64 extension will be a little less expensive than trying to what has to be done on the Minnesota side. And that's the reason why the Minnesota cost is a little bit more. The most important thing is that every dime we need to build this project has been identified and it's set aside. Both the states of Wisconsin and the states of Minnesota have collected enough money, and the project is ready to go. We just need an approval. Notable supporters of the project include Governors Dayton and Walker, Congresswoman Bachmann on the Minnesota side, Congressman Kind and Duffy on the Wisconsin side, as well as Congressman Kravach. Senators Klobuchar, Cole, Franken, and Johnson are supporters. Every state legislator who represents us on both sides of the river, and also Washington County and the St. Croix County Board, thank you all for your decades, I think, it works out to be decades of support for this project and resolutions that you passed. Again, current situation, Minnesota and Wisconsin have their funding in place. MnDOT is ready to begin building this project. However, that opinion from the Park Service that no new structure can be built in a Wild and Scenic riverway without a congressional exemption from the act, and that is what we are about as an organization, is trying to encourage and ensure that Congress does indeed pass an exemption for us. Presently, bills have been introduced in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Congresswoman Bachmann and Senator Klobuchar are the chief authors of the bills. There was a subcommittee hearing in the U.S. House. Congresswoman Bachmann's bill was heard earlier this spring, and Senator Klobuchar's bill was just heard last Thursday, and the chairman was able to submit some testimony. I think he may have been able to read about that in the Hudson Observer, so thank you to him for that. Also, some project deadlines are coming up starting this fall. The way that Minnesota has collected their $350 million for the project is from a couple of sources, some state sources of gas tax revenue, but also federal sources from their typical allocation of federal dollars. Well, some of those federal dollars are set to expire in 2014. MnDOT estimates it will take 3 years to expend them for this project, and so they kind of need to know whether they have a green light for the project by this fall. And at this point, Governor Dayton has said that we need to know by October 1st. Now, we're hoping that we're showing some progress, and we can work with that deadline a little bit, but the important point is we need to get moving, and we do need for this approval to happen as soon as it can. Most certainly it has to be this session of Congress. So this is, again, the third attempt, probably the final attempt to build a bridge. How do we win this time when we've been beaten a couple of times already? Well, we think it's important and sort of an organizing principle of our coalition that citizens' voices must be heard on this project. We want a new bridge. Supporters must be organized and speak with one voice. Whether you live on the east side or the west side of the river, we're a community of interest, and it's important that we find a way to speak with a single voice on these issues and work together. And then also, we want for project decisions to be made as public as possible. A lot of the decisions in this project have been made through a bureaucratic process or else through litigation. And we want a public process where people can weigh in and have a final determination for this project to move forward. So we formed a coalition. The Coalition for the St. Croix River Crossing was formed this spring. Again, I want to thank the board for your contribution. Your initial contribution of $500 was helpful to us to sort of get filing fees paid for and some things like that. So I hope you do accept some credit for your initial role in getting us off the ground. We are a nonprofit organization, a bi-state alliance of local government, business, community, members, and also of labor unions who are supportive and want to work on this project. Our purpose as an organization is to educate the citizens and also advocate for the bridge. And we do this work in both Wisconsin and in Minnesota, in Washington, D.C., in the media, so we can inform the public, and then also grassroots citizen outreach directly, where we're having community meetings explaining to people about the project, letting them ask questions, and encouraging their support. Again, our organizing philosophy, we believe that most people want this bridge. However, our opponents are not as great in numbers as us, who are supporters, but they are well organized. They have national funding and influence, so we do have some work to cut out for us. The previous approach, the last two times, the city of Stillwater hired a lobbyist to try to get a bridge built, and it was important to them that they do that, but that wasn't enough. But we need a more regional approach for a regional project. This board and other groups and organizations also sent supportive messages and said, well, we really got to build a bridge, but there wasn't really a coordinated, sustained effort, a professional effort to try to get something done, and that's what the coalition is about. So we built this regional coalition in support of a regional project. We have professional, federal, and state advocacy people working on it, including myself. I'm also the lobbyist for the state of Minnesota for this project. We have citizen education and involvement in a planful way, and then also media relations work that we've done as well, too, to make sure that reporters have good information on the supportive side of the project. Our activity to date, we've had many advocacy meetings and lobbying with federal and state elected officials, both in the St. Croix Valley and in their offices in Madison, St. Paul, and in Washington. We provided reporters and editorial boards with accurate supporting information about this project. We've used our website, which is, we mean for it to be kind of a one-stop shop for information about the coalition, about the project, and also we're encouraging people to join right on our website and help us. Also a Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube for public education and outreach. And then we're just now beginning our grassroots campaign, which will run through August and September. It'll be very important for us to make sure that we can bring people to the coalition as supporters. Our message points are pretty simple. First of all, the current lift bridge is obsolete, it's fracture critical, and it's unsafe. It's time to build a new crossing. The sufficiency of the bridge has been rated at 33 on a 100 scale. That's less than what the 35W bridge was when it collapsed. So it's time for a new bridge. The St. Croix River Crossing is the right project in the right location. We need a 4-lane bridge to handle the volume of traffic that we have right now. 18,000 cars a day on average cross the Stillwater Bridge. Usually for a 4-lane bridge, if you have about 13 to 15,000 cars a day is what the transportation planners tell us, you need a 4-lane bridge. We have 18,000, so it's clear that the data supports a 4-lane bridge option. That's what must be built. All other options were reviewed and disqualified for this bridge. We have the right plan. There have been other options and ideas, but this bridge is in the right location and it's the right size. And then finally, people who support the project care deeply about the river. We are seeking a narrow exemption to allow a bridge to be built. We do not want to blow up the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. We think that the majority of the public likes the protections of the river. We just want to build a bridge, and we want to leave the other protections in place. I just wanted to show you another picture of where the bridge will be located. It works out to be about a mile downriver from the current location as it would go across the river. And we think in time this is going to be an iconic bridge. We think the Stillwater Lift Bridge is an icon, 80 years old, this type of structure that it is. And this cable stay bridge will be an icon too. The economic impact of the project. The bridge project will create thousands of jobs for area families. 3,000 direct and indirect jobs will be created each year during the project as an average. At the peak of construction, 6,200 people will have jobs working on this bridge. And it's not just the construction guys. I believe that I want to say it's about $200 million in wages will be paid to the construction folks who work on the bridge, but also people who serve lunches or dinners or host meetings and conferences, hoteliers who have to house people who may come out of town. So there's lots of economic opportunity for the region as well too as this project is constructed. The other point is that the project is not too expensive. It has a positive cost-benefit ratio of 1.53, and essentially because we have a record of design from the US DOT, they don't give you a record of decision unless the project makes sense for fiscal reasons. It is expensive, but it's not too expensive. It is a good value for taxpayers. For the next steps, we are attempting to build our coalition. We're looking for supporters who will sign on and be vocal. Each of you should have received a card in front of you with basically that's our appeal card that we're giving out to folks. On the back side is some basic project information, and we're hoping that folks will learn about the coalition, learn about the bridge, and join us. We are also doing some fundraising as well to pay for the activity that we mentioned as well too. We hope in time that this board may consider another contribution as well too. Thank you for what you've done thus far. Washington County has contributed about $10,000. I think you've maybe heard that the city of Stillwater has contributed $80,000. New Richmond has contributed $2,500, and that's appreciated. I just met with the city of Hudson last night, and they're considering a contribution as well. We hope in time this board will consider that also. For community education, grassroots meetings are occurring throughout the valley. Each of you are members of churches or civic groups. We'd love to be invited to come and speak to folks about this bridge. We want for people to understand the project, to like it, and then also to come to our coalition website and support the project. We're reaching people through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and also through the traditional media. And again, we are continuing to lobby for congressional action and also to preserve the funding that we have presently in the 2 states. The way to become members, basically go to our website, stcroixcrossing.org. You'll find all kinds of great project information there, and we can mostly answer just about any question you might have. If not, there's an email address. That email address comes to me, and I answer those questions as well too. You can like our coalition Facebook page. The important thing is to really talk about the bridge and say it really can't happen this time. One of the things that we deal with when we're out in the public is, oh, that thing, they've been talking about that for years, they'll never build it. Well, they will. We've never been closer than we are today in getting a project and getting it built. So the first thing that must happen is that people have to believe that it can happen, and we believe it can happen. And so we're hoping that that we'll enlist your assistance to make sure that folks can understand that this can get done this time. And again, please invite us to make presentations. My email address there, stcroixcrossing@gmail.com. If you go there and send me an email, I'd be delighted to come speak to your groups and organizations. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
The bridge that they proposed 2 weeks ago, the 3-lane, is that just to muddy things up a little, or is that something that was made too late, or a proposal that was made too late?
Mr. Supervisor, I think that's exactly correct. The design, the location has been studied and rejected twice previously. So we know that it really can't be built there. The environmental regulators at the federal and state level did not like that location. I think that the proponents of that location have said, well, we didn't study a 3-lane bridge, and we didn't study at this slow design speed. And that's true. But we did study location, and the amount of bluff material on both sides of the river that would have to be removed, the large retaining walls that would have to be built, and also it's not possible to wedge a bridge into that location. It would be horrible for downtown Stillwater. It would completely dominate their views of the river. They'll never support it, and that's the intention, we believe, is that it's just to muddy the waters and to try to take us off our game, basically, to get this done. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. How many vehicles per day will this bridge eventually handle, and what is the life expectancy of the bridge?
Mm-hmm. The life expectancy of the bridge is 100 years, so they're building this to not have to ever do this again, at least in our lifetimes. And it basically will handle the traffic that a 4-lane bridge can handle. I want to say it's in the neighborhood of 40 to 50,000 cars a day ultimately. There isn't that level of traffic now to use it. But if you think about a century ahead, at some point there will be. So they're planning ahead as they build this project.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Buck Malik. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. It's important that we be accurate, and I have read the judge's decisions, and I've read the Park Service position, and it is not fair to characterize the Park Service opinion as saying no new structure is allowed under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. I hope you won't say that again. You are familiar with the name of Roger Tompton, the architect who also lives in Stillwater. He was a member of the Stakeholder group throughout its process, as you probably know. He also submitted testimony to the Senate subcommittee that met recently, and he addressed the question of, that was the very same one that Supervisor Schenk just raised, was serious consideration given to a lower, slower, and much less expensive option. And he said in his statement, proponents of the Senate bill indicate that all alternatives were studied in the mediation process held from 2003 to 2006. As a stakeholder in that mediation process, I can assure you this was not the case. Only high-speed freeway-style solutions were analyzed. So there's a fellow who was present who contradicts what you have just said and what others, including our own chairman, have been misled to believe was the case. You may have read a recent article in the Star Tribune written by reporter Kevin Giles, who did some deep investigation, and he actually interviewed a former MnDOT highway engineer named Adil Larry, who years ago had worked on acquiring land in Oak Park Heights for one of the earlier conceptions of the project. And he said, that's engineer Larry, a 3-lane bridge with 2 lanes dedicated to peak hour traffic in a single direction would make better sense. He went on to say, I think we need to look at the reality. People are not driving as far or as often, said Larry, now a transportation fellow at the University of Minnesota. Because of advances in technology, More people are shopping online and doing their jobs from home with computers and cell phones, he said. I take it you disagree with him.
Yes, sir, I do. On a couple things there I'll address. The statement about the Park Service not approving any construction that would impair the riverway is accurate. It was based upon...
Not that no bridge could be designed that would have adverse impacts.
No new bridge. No new bridge can be built that has a direct or adverse impact can be built without an exemption from Congress.
That is not correct, sir.
It is, sir. The bridge that could be built, the bridge that the Park Service probably could license is if we were to tear down and destroy the current lift bridge and build another two-lane bridge in the exact same location. That would be permitted. It would not solve the transportation problem. It would ruin downtown Stillwater, and for that reason, it can't be built. We believe that the drawings of a diagonal bridge that were submitted by Mr. Topton and his group. First of all, there's no engineering behind it. It's a picture of a bridge essentially. So it's accurate to say that this location has been studied thoroughly for a bridge, and it simply can't be built there. It doesn't work as a transportation project. The cost issue as well too, because there isn't any engineering behind it. No government has verified any of those costs that have been estimated. Those were the project advocates that suggested those costs, and we think that and other transportation planners disagree that those indeed may be accurate, and that analysis is being done now.
Could you address what has been a particular sore spot in the past, the part of the loop trail that would be in the town of St. Joseph? What is the current plan for whom would own and manage that loop?
I'm not certain. I believe it's the county. I believe that the trail would be maintained by the county. I'm not certain of that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. My comments this morning are going to be stated from an aesthetic, an economic, and an environmental point of view. According to the St. Croix River Crossing Cost Estimate Review, completed in 2010 by a firm known then as Post, Buckley, Shue, Jernigan, which was subsequently acquired by London-based Atkins International Engineering Consultancy, the cost of this ill-conceived project will be $484 million. That $484 million, by the way, does not include the additional cost of acquiring land for the bridge approach rights-of-way in both Minnesota and Wisconsin. Another study carried out by the University of Minnesota's Department of State and Local Public Finance and published April 26th of this year indicates that the estimated cost of this bridge will be in the vicinity of $690 million. That study goes on to state not only does this project's price mean that millions of dollars would be unavailable for other transportation projects, it also means Minnesota taxpayers would be footing the bill for Wisconsin commuters, to which I respectfully add the words, and vice versa. You mentioned this morning that the cost was going to be in the vicinity of $633 million.
Correct.
I've got three figures here. I don't know which of them is correct, but any one of them seems excessive. And what about the detrimental effect on our National Scenic Riverway, which will result from the deposition of road de-icing chemical runoff during the 5+ months of winter when such chemicals are in use? In 2008, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency declared the St. Croix River to be an impaired waterway. And as recently as June 7th and 9th of this year, that same agency issued the latest of its air pollution health alerts for our area, warnings due primarily to elevated ozone concentrations and consequent pollutants released principally from motor vehicles. Shifting perspectives slightly, in a recent interview, Duana Bremer, Director of Social Services for Polk, Burnett, and St. Croix counties, shared her concern that because of recent changes in Wisconsin's budget, it will become increasingly more difficult for the most vulnerable citizens of our counties to find the help they need, and that the poorest of our children will not have their nutritional needs met because of a recent 10% reduction in the funding of school food programs. Within Polk, Burnett, and St. Croix counties, there are 9 school districts which participate in what's called the Happy Kids Backpack Program, whereby needy children are sent home on weekends with roughly $7 worth of food in their backpack for consumption over the weekend. In order to accommodate the increasing demand for this vital weekend nourishment, Wisconsin's Department of Public Instruction has requested an additional $795,000 for the 2011 school year. Instead, however, the Department of Public Instruction will be receiving $695,000 less in funding for that essential backpack program than what was received during the school year just ended. June Paul, School Nutrition Team Director, Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, responded to that cutback by stating that a meal cannot be simply reduced by 10%. And according to an article recently published in Cap Times out of Madison, 39% of Wisconsin children are in need of free or reduced cost food programs. The article just cited continues by stating that many families in this region of our state have even greater needs, rivaling those of Milwaukee's inner city. In Menominee, for example, 45% of school-aged children utilize either free or reduced cost food programs. In the communities of Siren and Webster, enrollment in reduced cost food programs is nearly double the state average, with 77% of those communities' school-aged children being in need of either free or reduced cost nutrition. In the village of Unity, which is near Wausau, not in our area, 3 out of every 4 school-aged children depend on reduced cost food programs. Given this scenario and others similar to it, it is categorically unconscionable that we are forging ahead, preparing to spend multi-millions of dollars on a multi-lane, high-speed river crossing, 8 miles in length, when the approaches on both the Minnesota and Wisconsin sides are factored in. Leonardo da Vinci once said, "When we place our hand into a flowing stream, we get to touch the last of that which came before and the first of that which is yet to come." Our country is at a crossroads unlike any we've ever experienced before. The flowing stream of which Da Vinci spoke could well be likened to our nation's economy, its housing foreclosures, its education and healthcare cuts, you name it. If this bridge is built, will we then have experienced the last of that which came before and the first of what is yet to come? This is neither the right time, nor is the Lower St. Croix National Scenic Riverway the right place for expending in excess of $484 million, perhaps as much as $690 million on a multi-lane, high-speed river crossing which will cost so much, yet serve so few, especially when one considers the fact that just 7 miles downstream, there already exists a multi-lane bridge which is functionally equivalent to this proposed and senseless megastructure. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I should respond or just a couple of, I guess I'll make a couple of statements. First of all, about air pollution. Given the number of cars, 18,000 cars a day that use the current Stillwater lift bridge, many of them are stalled in traffic, and when they're stalled in traffic, they're exhibiting, there's a lot of air pollution. So we think that ultimately one way to reduce air pollution, in particular in an area where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic like in downtown Stillwater, is to have a crossing where people will not be jammed in traffic for long periods of time. Also on water pollution issues, this project is designed to reduce the amount of phosphorus that flows into the St. Croix River by 20%. And that's a significant reduction that has to do with the ponding that we built, mostly on the Minnesota side and maintained on the Minnesota side. So that's over the current levels of phosphorus. So we will be improving water quality with this crossing. Again, the traffic, we have an 80-year-old fracture critical lift bridge that was designed to carry 11,000 cars per day. It presently carries 18,000 cars per day. There must be a new crossing. This is the design that many stakeholders worked tirelessly for years and years. It is a compromise, and I think like any compromise, you're not going to have a unanimity of opinion, but we think we have a good project. It makes sense economically. It has a positive return to taxpayers, and it should go forward.
Nowhere in what I presented did I say I'm against a bridge. I'm just against the magnitude of this project.
The stakeholders feel, that the coalition feels that you have 2 4-lane highways and you should have a 4-lane bridge to connect them. Otherwise, you're purposefully building a traffic jam in the middle of a wild and scenic riverway, and that's not good for the environment either.
It seems to me that many folks who are proponents of this current design, this mega bridge, for want of a better short title, believe that it will take unduly long to examine the possibility of a smaller bridge, such as the Tompton design, for example, and seem to forget the point that the same Congress that created the laws, of which you listed the 3 primary ones there, is being asked to create an exception to one of them. It could create an exception to any of them. It could create an exception to the law which requires an environmental impact statement and that kind of study. So it lies within the power of the Congress, which is being asked to make one sort of exception, to make a different kind of exception in order to shorten the time necessary to study a more reasonable alternative. I don't expect you to agree with the words reasonable alternative, but do you agree that Congress could make other exceptions if it saw fit to do that and shorten the time?
Ultimately, Congress has the power to make laws, and I suppose they could waive all kinds of laws. And one of the benefits of this project is we're asking for one we believe, very narrow waiver. In order to make any other project work, it would require the waiver of many, many laws. And there's no telling, number one, whether or not we'd be successful. Number two, the time, we're working so very hard to pass one simple change. And I think that in order to build a diagonal bridge, first of all, you do it over the objections of the city of Stillwater, that they don't want a diagonal bridge in front of their riverfront park. So there's those issues. So I think it's not just congressional laws, but you probably have to waive state laws as well too that allow cities to object to projects that they don't want. I just don't think it's very practical that bridge could ever be built.
As a Wisconsin taxpayer, I'd like to know who's going to pay for the tender that sits on the Stillwater lift bridge to allow bicycles and pedestrians to cross it.
Part of the stakeholder agreement, there is an endowment fund created in the Minnesota Treasury, and some of the money for this project goes into that endowment and pays for the maintenance and operation of that lift bridge forever, well into the future, decades. Yes, sir.
Thank you. What is does maybe anybody in the room, do you know what the amount of traffic is on the I-94 bridge on a daily? 60 to 75,000?
It's close to 75 now.
It did to that, and that point, and that's something I haven't addressed yet, that did come up in previous questions from supervisors. All plans for the East Metro include the St. Croix River Crossing coming online. And if it does not, the estimate is that the level of traffic by 2030 on that I-94 crossing could be about 30% higher than projected. That means not only the bridge, but also the I-94 corridor going into downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul would be 30% higher traffic potentially. And it's not efficient. It's not an efficient way to build that. We need this additional infrastructure. And the idea that we could have just one bridge serving this 2-county area, it's not sufficient. We need this bridge to come online. MnDOT and Wisconsin DOT both believe that we need this additional crossing, a 4-lane crossing.
Well, where I was going to go with my thought was, for many years, that I-94 was it was a 4-lane bridge. Well, actually, it was two lanes, small, and it's grown as demand has gone up. It just seems to me, again, this is an extremely expensive project that I think a reasonable approach would be to start with something much much smaller in dollar value to get there, because as the facts that I'm looking at here, which is kind of surprising to hear how that I-35 bridge that went down, that they replaced that, and that was under you know, some pretty extreme timeline, and there were some big benefits or bonuses paid to make that, to bring that back online. And yet this bridge here is 2.5 times that in cost. And to me, that just seems, that's crazy.
To that point, it's important to remember that that bridge is shorter. It's less than 2,000 feet versus this project which is 8 miles long. It also includes the loop trail, the rehabilitation of the lift bridge, and lots of historic preservation items as well that the 35W bridge did not have. If you compare just the 35W bridge to just the bridge over the St. Croix River, just the bridge portion of the project, this project is cheaper on a square foot basis.
Well, that, again, it just seems like, I think what I'm hearing from this coalition, it seems that we're piling on more and more things onto it just to make it a more grandiose project. For instance, I'd love to know, what's just the cost of the bridge? Let's take out, if you're saying that the Stillwater lift bridge is inadequate, unsafe, then let's get rid of it. How much of this project, how many dollars are going into this supposed little trail to appease walkers and bikers and such? I'd love to know that piece of it. And the other part that I'm a little annoyed with is you had on your slide claiming that that lift bridge is unsafe.
It is.
And I don't believe that for a minute, because MnDOT and the people that have inspected that bridge keep saying it is not unsafe. That needs to be corrected and found out, because if that thing is really that unsafe, then why don't we close it?
It is safe. The bridge is safe. MnDOT has made it very clear that the crossing is safe to use. It does rank, though, 33 on a 100 scale for sufficiency, which is a scale of safety. There is a higher level of accidents between, as you come off the bridge in Stillwater up to the first stoplight, the rate of accidents are double the state average in Minnesota. And a lot of those folks are Wisconsin travelers who have to go through that very dangerous intersection. So, we think it is accurate to say that it's not as safe as it could be. To the question of cost, you also asked about
But you had unsafe in there, that the bridge was unsafe. But you just got done saying in MnDOT, and you agreed, it is safe.
It is safe. The bridge is safe.
So I think a word should be changed in your presentation.
The question of cost of the bridge, of the St. Croix crossing, it's about $292 million is the cost of the project. And it's important to remember that this project is a compromise, and it's delicately balanced. And people wanted different things in the project, but the project as it sits is a compromise that allows it to go forward. Yes, sir.
Mike, do you have in your facts any idea of what the land acquisition costs in Wisconsin will be for the right-of-way on our side of the river?
All we have is the total cost for Wisconsin, which is the midpoint is $280 million, and that includes all costs.
It was my understanding that it did not include land acquisition. That was only construction.
No, it does include all costs, including land acquisition.
I stand corrected then.
Supervisors, we spent an hour on this. Let's have one more question, if that's agreeable, and move on. You had your hand up.
Well, thank you.
All right, we'll do two.
I would
minutes.
just
You
like
spoke.
to say that I've served on the committee in St. Croix County that has looked at the possibility of the county taking on a bicycle trail coming off of the loop, what's called the Loop Bridge, and so far, to my knowledge, this county nor the town of St. Joseph have agreed to in any way take any responsibility for that bike trail. So somebody might want to go back and take another look at that.
Mr. Chairman, I do need to, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. I probably should not have guessed publicly. Why don't I find an answer to that question, and I'll be happy to respond to that in a memo.
Final question.
It isn't even a question, it's just a statement. I think we need to keep in mind that I think it was 1951 when the first study was started to look at the replacement of this bridge over the river. And this, it has been said before, this is our last best chance. If it doesn't happen now, it's not gonna happen in our lifetime, and that's not real constructive for future progress and development of both states. This, you know, they had to add cost to appease some of the walkers and the bikers, and that elevates the cost, but this is a bridge that we need. I mean, I don't use it because I don't have to, but I mean, you don't have to go through Stillwater very often to notice that that bridge needs to be replaced, and this is our last best chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's move to the report from the Highway Department, and then we'll also have a report from the county surveyor. So Tim and Brian are both present. Tim, are you going to lead off?
Sure. Can we tag team?
You can tag team. Do you need a mat or what?
Thank you. In the spirit of time, I think we'll just tag team since we reside in the same building and in the same budget area. So with that, I did sit on the stakeholder group of the Stillwater, so that was very painful, like worse than a root canal. Root canal ends. So anyway, I won't go into it. Any questions? That's where we're going to start off. We're just going to answer questions and we'll move on. On our reports, we have the Highway Department report and the County Surveyor report. Hopefully everything in there was self-explanatory. If you have any questions on it, it's a 2010 report.
Supervisors, I'm assuming you all read the report. It was distributed in your board packets.
I know you're all in shock. Usually you see the dog and pony show, but I have a lot of passion with a lot of different areas. And if I start in on one, you're going to be tortured. So I thought I'd just leave it at question and answers, and you can laser what you're interested in for both Brian and myself. Brian, did you have anything in particular?
No, I'd just like to thank you once again for the opportunity to share an update with you all. If you haven't had a chance to look at it and you ever come up with any questions, as always, the office is always open. We had an interesting article. I just received our Wisconsin County Surveyor's newsletter, and it has an article on remonumentation. If anyone's interested, I could get you a copy of that too. With that, thank you.
Apparently you guys did a marvelous job in your written report, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this point, we've completed all of our other ancillary items, and we're ready to begin our agenda. So before we do that, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll get right into our agenda. The public announcement, and Supervisor Schrank will be happy to collect your contribution to the refreshment fund if you have not already done that. And I can assure you, if you do that voluntarily, it will be easier than having Alfie come and grab your arm. So, is that appropriate? Okay, agenda item number 2 is a resolution approving the plat of the German Settlement Cemetery. This comes from the Community Development Committee. Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Supervisor Hermsen and a second from Supervisor Marzoff. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm assuming you're ready to vote. Supervisor Marzoff, you need to input your second, please. This is a resolution approving the plat of the German Settlement Cemetery. On motion from Hermsen, second by Marzoff. Proceed to vote.
Where's Supervisor Senator?
I can't answer that.
Martin is absent. Everybody's here. Go ahead.
I'm sure he's in favor of it.
Should we vote for
And the resolution is approved. Resolution item number 3 is a resolution supporting federal funding of community action agency programs. This comes to us from Administration Committee.
I'll bring it to the floor.
Motion from Supervisor Wentz and second from Supervisor Norton Baumann. Discussion. Supervisor Stoffer.
Well, in case anyone hasn't noticed, the federal government isn't in the greatest financial condition, and so it's always nice to have someone else pay for something that we benefit by. We have to remember that other people have hard financial decisions to make also.
Any additional discussion? Supervisor Marzov.
I would just add that at the June Health and Human Services open hearing, the lady that directs WESCAP spoke, and she spoke very convincingly in favor of gaining county support for the good programs that they operate.
Any additional discussion? Supervisor Urmson.
Thank you, Board Chair. Have we seen an impact of what would happen if we were to turn this down? I mean, is there, do we know what would be eliminated? Or are we basically saying everything on the sheet would be gone if this was cut? Do we know?
I would request input either from the committee chair or from the HHS.
I have the executive director. Peter
Okay.
Kildy is here.
Okay.
Peter, would you like to come and answer that question, please? This is Peter Kildy. He is the executive director of WESCAP. Yes.
Either place.
Well, good morning. I don't have a formal presentation today, but I would be happy to answer this and any other questions that come up. What's really at stake here in this particular resolution is asking for support for something called the Community Services Block Grant. And that is, at this point, only 4% of WESCAP's total budget. But this is the funding that we use to kind of keep the whole agency together. It allows us to run about 110 grants or 60 services under one administration over these 7 counties. It's also the funding that we use to pay for grant writing and program development services. So when we're able to bring $1.6 million into St. Croix County and help these 990 families, that's because of our ability to demonstrate the need and our agency's capacity to address that need to a wide public. It's not just federal services, but private foundations and other investors. So what immediately will happen, particularly after the legislation last night, or the deal that's being worked through right now, there will be a tremendous amount of pressure on any domestic service, okay? And right now we've got 50 million Americans living in poverty. By the time you take this amount of funding cuts and service cuts that they're proposing and distribute over the remaining amount of programs there, this is going to have a serious impact. There's no doubt about it on every county in America. And again, part of what brings me here, and I don't want to elaborate too long on this, is that one of the first groups that spoke out opposing cuts to the Community Services Block Grant was the National Association of Counties. And I actually have the resolution here, I can pass it around a little bit, but basically they just say that the National Association of Counties supports full funding for the Community Services Block Grant and the formula basis that it's allocated on. And essentially what they're doing is they're looking out for their membership, which is counties, and acknowledging that if these organizations, CAP organizations, don't have the capacity to bring in as much funding and supportive services from various sources, those people are still going to be in these counties, and they're going to be looking to counties to meet those needs. So I think that's their position on it.
Supervisor Stoffer.
What is the amount?
Pardon me?
What's the amount of the grant historically?
Nationwide, this program is about $700 million. And in Wisconsin, it's about $6 million that's distributed to 16 different CAP agencies and 3 different kind of supporting organizations, UMOS and Wisconsin Coalition on Aging. Our agency gets currently about $380,000 to do this over 7 counties.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. I notice here, it lists in here that you're looking at 1.5, I'll round it up to $1.6 million, saying
Right.
last year that you served 990 families.
Right.
And that breaks down to about $1,600 per family. Of that $1,600 and reading what you provide, is that $1,600, is that actual dollars going to these families, or is that just the support that you guys, in other words, your staff, to, that's the first question, is that just going to staff support to help provide for these families? The second question comes in is that on the, therefore be it resolved, what's being asked for is that we continue to support the funding at the 2008 level. I guess my question coming from that is, are you expecting the county to add on to what the federal government is no longer going to provide? Or are you just, well, I guess that's what, it sounds like that's what you're asking.
Okay, I'll address that point first. No, we're not asking for a dime from the counties in this resolution. What we are doing, and this position was drafted earlier, kind of in response to some earlier discussions around the continuing resolutions and the president's budget and whatnot. We are proposing to Congress and to the country that we understand programs are going to have to take some cuts. And by going back to the 2008 level, that represents about a 10% cut, which if you spread it across, all domestic programs, would hit the targets they were talking about. So we're saying we're not going to fight that. We're not asking for every dime. We're just saying we would accept these levels, okay? With regard to the earlier question, it's a little complicated to say we help 990 families at an average of $1,600 per family. And what's complicated about it is that what we do is administer grants and programs. So some programs like weatherization, okay, we did 60 homes in St. Croix County, average probably about $10,000 a home, okay, to bring down their energy costs. And that's a combination of funding from federal Department of Energy, state public utility funds, and that kind of stuff. In some cases, these are people that were helped through our food pantry work, and the backpack program we heard mentioned earlier at WestCap administers that. So that's a very small amount. A lot of it's sort of in the middle. One of the things that we do more in St. Croix County than any other county is help people with their housing issues. St. Croix County has had one of the highest foreclosure rates of any county in Wisconsin. So WestCap developed actually a very effective mediation program for helping people work with their lenders, try to avoid these foreclosures, work through that situation. But between all of our housing programs, we helped 240 families. That's a situation where most of that help is our staff providing technical assistance and mediation services. So there's quite a difference. Overall, in our services, WestCap operates on an 8% administration budget, which is very favorable in this environment given all the compliance complexities and stuff. And everything else is services.
Is there a minimum, or I should say a maximum income guideline? I'm sure there is that that you guys would, WestCap provide support for. It says here low income, but
Right.
I'll give you an example. Sitting in on a committee that we just had recently over the flooding, and it was rather surprising to hear that families making $70,000 a year, and we're handing out block grants to the tune of $10,000, $15,000.
Right.
So I see in that regard, I think there's a little bit of abuse going on. But that's why I'm kind of curious here. When we talk of low income, I'd be very curious where what's considered low, because we certainly seem to find that there's been a lot of beating up of those that are considered rich.
I understand.
So,
Again, what WestCap does is we administer about 110 different grants and funding sources. The truth is that every funding source defines their eligibility themselves. We don't set any of these. For the Community Services Block Grant, which is the focus of this particular resolution, the funding level for that kind of support is 125% of the federal poverty level. So 100% is $18,000 for a family of four, so we're up around 24 or 25. In the surveys that we've done, the vast majority of our recipients, in fact, the average over all of our programs, last time we looked at it a couple years ago, was 75% of the federal poverty level. It wasn't even at poverty. So, yeah, it is possible, for example, under the weatherization rules, to weatherize a house that I could never afford to live in. And we don't have any control over that. You know, if they meet that test, if their income at this point, you know, they've lost their jobs or something and the income's not there, then we have to follow the rules of that funder. But dramatically, the most impact that we have is really on people that have genuine and undisputable need.
Any additional discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Marzak.
Mr. Chair, I misspoke, and I would both like to clarify my remark and apologize to this gentleman. By mistake, I thought that WestCap was the organization that was represented at the June Health and Human Services Public Forum. It was really the Family Resource Center, and I still feel the same about your organization, though, that it's worthy of support.
Thank you, sir. As I was sitting in the back room listening, the woman who's the director of WestCap, I thought maybe you were fooled by the ponytail. I'm just not sure. But
Is there any additional discussion? If not, this resolution is in front of us on a motion by Supervisor Wentz, second by Supervisor Norton Baumann, to support federal funding of Community Action Agency programs. Norton Baumann's second is in. Ready to vote? Proceed to vote. I did. And the resolution is adopted. Agenda item number 4 is a resolution repealing the resolutions relating to the hiring freeze. This resolution has been discussed at the Administration Committee. The resolution comes from the Administration Committee. Chair would entertain a motion from Supervisor Rebholz and a second from Supervisor Seacard. Discussion.
I'd like to point out, Mr. Chairman, that this is a sort of a cleanup resolution. The Administration Committee felt that with the arrival of the county administrator and the very proactive role that we expect the county administrator to take in our staffing levels, that it's no longer necessary for the county, and some would say it never was necessary, but at least it's no longer necessary for the county board to be, if you will, micromanaging the process of filling vacant positions. We can expect the county administrator to do a better job than the 19 of us could do, and to make appropriate recommendations on positions that don't need to be filled or that can be consolidated or every other kind of combination leading to greater efficiency. So this cleanup resolution takes off the books things that I believe were appropriate at the time but are no longer appropriate.
Any additional discussion? If not, you'll proceed to vote. This is a resolution repealing the resolutions relating to the hiring freeze. And the resolution is adopted unanimously. Agenda item number 5 is a resolution authorizing the reallocation of bond proceeds. I think the resolution is straightforward. I will ask Michelle to come forward if any explanation is necessary, but I think you can see that there is a remaining amount of bond proceeds that can be appropriately used for the project on the Baldwin roof. Chair would entertain a motion. This comes from the Administration Committee.
So moved.
Motion from Wentz and second from Seacard. Discussion. Supervisor Stopper.
So if we use 72 grand for, from the bond to pay for this, I assume there was 72 grand allocated to this project, so I was just wondering what happens to that.
Why don't you come forward and address that, Michelle, please?
The original projects that were in this bond actually came in under budget, which is why we have the $72,000 to reallocate. I believe that was your question, or not?
No.
Sorry.
The 72,000 is for the roof at Baldwin, right?
Mhm.
So I assume that before we started redoing the roof at Baldwin, we had allocated money, so there was 72 grand allocated towards the roof at Baldwin. So I'm wondering where that money is now going, since we're using the bond to pay for that.
Basically, it'll go back into the general capital project fund, so it can be used for the 2012 budget if there are capital outlay items in the 2012 budget.
Any additional questions or discussion? If not, supervisors proceed to vote. This is a resolution authorizing the reallocation of the bond proceeds. Reallocation might be a little strong. It's just using the funds differently. This is not a budget amendment. Proceed to vote. And that is adopted unanimously. Agenda item number 6 is a resolution adopting the resolution drafting and review policy. The resolutions that we have in front of us, the procedures that we use, the way they're drafted, all of that has gone under a fair amount of review, and this resolution also comes from the Administration Committee, and Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Norton Bauman and a second from Supervisor Seacard. Discussion. Supervisor Malik.
I'd like to point out that item 7 was added since the original drafting effort in it, and it allows what I think is a very good safety valve opportunity there. There may be the occasional case where it's just hard to meet all the deadlines and specifications and difficulties, and yet it would be the sense of the county board that it wanted to pass something without necessarily dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's, and so the county administrator is given the authority on a case-by-case basis for good reasons to make exceptions where they're appropriate.
Any additional discussion or comments? Supervisor Stoffer.
2 questions. One, I was curious that various county officials that need to review resolutions get twice as much time to review them as the county board supervisors do. And 2, I'm somewhat puzzled by the level of detail that apparently is needed in this resolution, even to the specifying where periods go and document format, which hopefully would change at some point and doesn't seem to be appropriate for a policy.
Corporation Counsel, can I have you address that? Would that be appropriate, since you've been assisting in the drafting of the resolution drafting policy?
I'm not sure there was a question asked.
I thought I heard a question.
Generally, the attempt was to standardize the format that the resolutions arrived at the county board in. So it got into some detail.
And how about the 15 days versus us getting 7, I believe, from?
Well, I think the committees will have vetted the subjects of the resolution by the time it comes to the staff for review. So it's not that the resolutions, the subjects of the resolutions are still going to be discussed at committee. The resolution itself will originate within the committee, then the resolution gets prepared, or the resolution can be prepared by a department head if they so desire. Then it's taken back to the committee for discussion. But the committees will see these things before anybody starts reviewing them at the later levels.
Supervisor Armisen.
Thank you, Board Chair. Corp Counsel, could you please expand on that a little bit? Because when I was reading through this and given past history, it seems that we never see the resolution in committee prior to it coming to here. Matter of fact, most of the time we're signing it just as it's coming before the board. And the part I'm a little troubled with on this is, it's just as you said, that it's usually discussed. It then goes from a discussion stage. We kind of formulate an idea of what we want. From there, the department head typically will have the resolution drafted, and we may or may not see that back in committee again after it's gone to Corp Counsel. What I would much rather see is after it's come out of Corp Counsel's review, that come back to committee so that everybody's on the same page and have signed off saying, yes, this is what we agree. Because I think many times a resolution will have wording in there different than what really was talked about in committee. So I don't see that in the process here at all. That's my concern, I guess.
I would think that might be the prerogative of the committee. If you want the resolution brought back to the committee for review prior to it coming to county board, I would think that would be appropriate, you know, based on the call of the committee and the committee chair. Some committees may feel that the intent of the resolution has been thoroughly discussed, and they would delegate that matter to staff to prepare it and bring it forward to county board. So I would think the policy or the resolution would allow for either.
Supervisor Norton-Bowman.
Thank you, Board Chair. There's also a provision in this, excuse me.
Could I add something to?
Sure.
I'm going to call right back on you, but this is a follow-up to the comment just made.
Your question or your comment was actually considered, and that's why there's language in here that says if the resolution has been reviewed, if the resolution is presented to the committee, then you can sign off on it when you get it. But if it's not reviewed before you get it, then the committee chair would have to sign it at a later time prior to the county board meeting. So we didn't go there because we weren't sure how the committees, the supervisors would want that to be approached. There may be cases, as Pat suggested, where you'll want to see it back because it's pretty detailed. There may be cases where it's a rather simple matter that you'll just go ahead and approve it and say, craft the language and we'll be fine with it. So I agree with Pat. It would be the chair's prerogative to decide whether or not they needed to see the resolution after it was prepared.
Now Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. That was going to be my very comment, that the committee chairs are obligated under this resolution, changing how we do resolutions, to sign off if the resolution has not been prepared before a committee meeting. As a committee chair, I would be hesitant to sign off if I had any question about the language within the resolution as it was drafted after our committee met. And I would assume that the other committee chairs would feel the same way. And for the purpose of safety, if I had one doubt, I would request that the resolution go back to the committee for more examination.
Any additional discussion? If not, this is a resolution that comes from the Administration Committee, a resolution adopting the resolution drafting and review policy. Comes on a motion from Supervisor Norton Baumann, second from Supervisor Seacard. Proceed to vote. And the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 7 is a resolution approving the labor agreement between the county and WPPA. By way of historical background, you will recall, supervisors, that some months previous, this agreement was ready to present to the county board, but at the last moment, there was some question raised by WPPA as a result of their ratification vote concerning some specific language. That has been resolved. This labor agreement is now presented for consideration by this county board. This is presented by the administration committee, and Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Supervisor Wentz and second from Supervisor Rebholz. Discussion. Any discussion? This is the last of the labor agreements. And seeing no discussion, I assume you're ready to vote. This is a resolution approving the labor agreement between the county and WPPA. On a motion from Supervisor Wentz and second from Supervisor Rebholz, proceed to vote. And the resolution is approved unanimously. Agenda item number 8 is an amendment to Ordinance Chapter 40, Lodging, Recreation Facilities, and Food Protection. This comes to us from the HHS Board, and Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Supervisor Wentz and second from Supervisor Schrank. Discussion. Any discussion on this ordinance amending Chapter 40? It's frankly very small and very technical. Seeing no discussion, I believe you're ready to vote. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 40. Motion by Wentz, second by Schrank. Proceed to vote. And the resolution is adopted unanimously. Agenda item number 9 is an ordinance amending St. Croix County Code of Ordinances dealing with land use and development in Chapter 17 of our zoning section. This comes to us from the Community Development Committee. And Chair would entertain a motion from Supervisor Hermsen with a second from Supervisor Sather. And discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this has to do primarily with the definition of what are livestock, and one of our members, Supervisor Joseph Hurchin, has particularly strong feelings about horses, which he sometimes communicates to the Board of Adjustment, but I think the rest of you should share. And I wonder if I could indulge myself by asking Mr. Hurchin to tell us what joy he takes in seeing the success of horses elevated to the level of livestock.
Chair observes that there may or may not be a response. Any other discussion or comments for the levity of the group? Seeing none, proceed to vote. This is an ordinance amending the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances then on a motion from Supervisor Hermsen, second from Supervisor Sather. and it is adopted unanimously. Agenda item number 10 is a resolution regarding the health center business plan. I think for purposes of our continuation and discussion, it would be appropriate to have this in front of us, have this on the board floor. So this is a motion that is offered by the HHS board, and Chair would entertain a motion from Supervisor Wentz with a second from Supervisor Horn. And we will proceed to discussion. I think it's also appropriate at this point, we have two members of the public that have requested the opportunity to speak. They have filled out an appropriate request form. Those forms have been signed by their supervisors. So it looks like we've got one more coming. With no particular bias as to who goes first. I'm just mixing them up a little bit, and we have three people that have requested an opportunity to speak. And the first person that I would invite to speak to the board, and I would remind all three of you before you speak, I believe our bylaws do indicate 3 minutes. I'm not going to, throw anything at you if you exceed 3 minutes, but this board has a history of lengthy speeches become counterproductive. So I would remind you that brevity is a virtue. The first person I would invite forward is Rick Prokash, and this approval is granted by Supervisor Roger Larson.
Thank you. I woke up this morning thinking about an iconic movie called Back to the Future, and kind of was like, why am I thinking about this? And so I had to go look it up. And the movie was released July 3rd of 1985. And a month later, apparently the St. Croix County Board started going into some negotiations with their employees. What I want to read to you is an article that was in the New Richmond News, and it had to do with 5 years, 10 years past, 25 years. And this was in April of this year that this article actually, in the 25 years ago section, was put in this. It's been an arduous 8 months for negotiators and county employees alike, but 3 contract settlements have finally been reached and approved by the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. In its regular session Tuesday, supervisors approved 1-year contracts with law enforcement and county services union members and a 3-year pact with health center employees. Tom Coop, labor negotiator since 1980, termed the health center contract the most vexatious of all because of concessions union members were asked to make in return for assurance that the facility would not be sold or leased for at least 3 years. A study committee set up a few months ago to explore the feasibility of selling or leasing the nursing home recommended it be kept in county hands if union members fulfilled their part of the bargain. Said committee chairman Paul Swemby, the union did what we asked them to do. I think we should now do what they asked us to do, meaning contract approval, including the controversial clause agreeing not to sell or lease. Swemby praised the nursing home and its staff. It's the best nursing home in the state of Wisconsin. Now that was an opinion, not the 5-star rating that the World News, that they got. That, like I said, so still continues. Under the best management with quality employees. I'm extremely proud of the care these patients receive. They are people of ours, whether they are relatives or not. He further noted that nursing home patients cannot speak for themselves. That was 25 years ago. There is a silver tsunami that you've heard say that's going to be hitting. If you look at science, like if you look at the natural tsunami that hit Japan, one of the things that happens is the water receded. It actually went away from the shore as it built up, and then it just crashed. Yes, the nursing home has beds that have been, the number of beds are down, that are filled. But guess what? That silver tsunami is going to hit. It's going to hit with a force and a vengeance. Whether things are approved or not, that silver tsunami is going to hit. I think Japan would like to have been prepared for what was coming. We can be prepared for what is coming. Do what is right. Like in the invocation, do what is right for those people that can't speak for themselves. What is the next sequel to the St. Croix County Back to the Future going to show us? Thank you.
Next person I'd invite forward is Norm Mastic, and this is an approval grant by Supervisor Norton Baumann. Norm?
Seldom in business do you find really exceptional performance by a business organization. It takes outstanding leadership, exceptional skill level, and a totally focused and dedicated group of employees achieving excellence in everything they do. It's pretty amazing that the county has such a business organization, the St. Croix County Nursing Home. It's one of the top nursing homes in Wisconsin and all of America. This means that the quality of care is superior to most private and nonprofit nursing homes. And it's right here in St. Croix County. For this, we have to thank Frank Robinson, administrator, the director of nursing, and all the dedicated employees for this unusual happening. The most amazing aspect of this whole nursing home performance is its ability to withstand efforts by the board to upset its 5-year strategic plan by unexpectedly taking away $360,000 in support dollars last year, generating a lot of negative press. Now the employees have contributed the remaining dollars to make it 100% self-sufficient in exchange for long-term facility support by the county board. No tax levy dollars are now needed for its operation. The county nursing home provides great flexibility in an uncertain world where the county is mandated to care for the health and safety of all its constituents. The need is growing for a low-income assisted living facility the longer this depressed economy exists. With all that is broken in Wisconsin, we should enthusiastically embrace a business like our county nursing home that provides the best quality of care for our most needed citizens. Please support our St. Croix County Nursing Home. Thank you.
Next person who I would invite to speak to us is Kim Dupree, and this permission has been granted by Supervisor Brian Hurchin.
I also have a letter here I think Steve Hermson brought forward to speak as well. This is from one of the family members, if I could read that first and then.
I think it was distributed to everyone.
Okay. We just wanted to make sure the folks at home on the television were able to hear it as well. If that is permissible with you.
Can you paraphrase it?
Okay. The letter is from a family member who just recently had their mother put in the nursing home last week. She is suffering from Alzheimer's. She's a wanderer. They had called the Kinnick home in River Falls after they'd done some research on the nursing home and decided that was the best fit because it was close for most of the family. And so when she called the home on Monday and sat down and talked with the social worker, they realized that she was a wanderer and that their skilled nursing facility in River Falls couldn't deal with being a wanderer. And so I guess there is a Comforts at Home also with River Falls that has the Alzheimer's capability, but they did not have any rooms available.
So after much family discussion as to what to do with Mom, because she's been wandering down the road in the middle of the day, they decided to ask the St. Croix Health Center if they would be able to put her there. And they were able to take her because our second floor is a locked unit. And so they were able to take her when another nursing home in the area could not take her and didn't have room for her. And they have been very pleased with the care that she's received, assisting in dressing and eating, distracts her with activities. They visit her every day. They are just amazed at the staff and how they deal with dementia. It takes training and a very special personality to care for those with dementia. It's not just about forgetting the names of your families. It involves forgetting how to use a zipper, or that even that your undergarments go on first, not second or third. It involves forgetting that one does not eat the orange rind, even if it's on your plate. It means becoming suspicious that people are taking your things or lying to you because you cannot remember where you left something. They feel very fortunate that they have a safe, secure, warm, and friendly environment for their mother right now, in her most vulnerable time. They point out that the 6 siblings employ excess of 35 people here in St. Croix County and have a combined property tax obligation in excess of $70,000 annually. They recognize federal, state, and local budgets are tight, but we urge you to continue supporting the St. Croix Health Center. And this was from Christy Cernas on Prominence Court in Hudson, Wisconsin, and all their siblings have signed the letter as well. I'll make my comments very brief. Thank you. I work mainly in the Human Services Department up in New Richmond. So I'm going to give you a little story of what happens on the Human Services side and how that might apply to the nursing home side. The little phrase I've heard time and time again, the county is the payer of last resort. The county is the payer of last resort. And this comes up especially when dealing with our emergency detentions. And I remember this board had this discussion a couple of years ago when Fred Johnson gave his presentation to the board and happened to mention that emergency detentions cost $1,000 a day. That got people's attention. And it's like, well, why can't these people pay for this? Why can't their insurance pay for this? And when it was explained that a lot of these people that have the conditions that warrant them getting emergency detention, they really aren't capable of stable employment. They don't have resources. They don't have a job. They can't pay. And then they don't have insurance that will pay. And bottom line, the buck stops here. If there's no money left anywhere else that you can gather, and believe me, Human Services tries everything they can to find the money somewhere, the county ends up paying those at $1,000 a day. And I remember back when I first started here a few years ago, it used to be like $500 or $600 a day because I helped program the system to do that billing. So it's increased significantly over the last few years. And so I know that we've always, had this discussion with the nursing home that it's not really a financial decision. And if you happen to see the Woodville Leader this week, you saw a graph in the paper that showed the county levy, the top green line here, and the bottom little red line here, that's the nursing home levy. So we know the nursing home has not been the major drag on the county levy, although it gets a lot of attention. It makes you wonder if it's taking up half the levy. It obviously isn't. But I think this could possibly be less of a political decision now in light of the governor's 2-year budget and more of a financial decision. And I say that because as I watch how the long-term support module had morphed into now family care, community health partners, and that kind of stuff, and now we're seeing with the new budget, there are caps on the enrollments in family care. And what I'm reading from the people who know this stuff better than I do is that that could force a lot more nursing home stays because there won't be the cheaper options available. Secondly, there'll be cuts to Medicaid. And we don't know for sure what all those cuts are being. I won't steal all of Frank and Fred's thunder, but it's the things they have talked about is the 90-day look back. If someone comes out of a hospital and it doesn't already have their Medicaid approved, there probably won't be too many private or nonprofit homes that will take somebody unless there's a firm pay source. You know you're going to get that money because now they can't go and bill back for whatever services they provide. Obviously, the financial stability of CHP is kind of rocky right now, and they're the ones that do a lot of our providing for some of this stuff. In the Human Services side, they've already started to scrutinize the prior authorizations a lot more closely. And now, of course, the economy in general. A lot of people have a lot less money to deal with. They don't have a job, they don't have insurance, their house isn't worth what it used to be. If they have to care for an elderly parent, sibling, whoever, loved one, are they going to have the resources to do that? And so, and I know this from personal experience too, with my own father-in-law. When you have a dementia person or somebody in their late stages, they're up in the middle of the night, they're wandering around the house, they're trying to grab their keys, they're trying to grab their medicine, and if you got to get up and go to work the next day and your parent has kept you up half the night, that's a tough road to haul. It's one thing when you're 20-something and it's your kids, they keep you up half the night. It's another thing when it's your parent, and your parent could be sneaking out the door in the middle of winter thinking he's going to go to St. Paul. So lastly, I'll just say, I think it's best if we can do whatever we can to control our own destiny and control our costs. If we subject ourselves, because we don't know what the state and federal funding will be, you can't stop people from growing older as much as we'd all like to. And the number of citizens needing the services, there aren't too many options available in how we can manage the care for these type of people. Again, the county is a payer of last resort, and I just see the storm clouds brewing on the horizon because of some of the changes in the budget. And I'm wondering if this is going to come back and give us an unexpected surprise, the unintended consequences Daryl normally talks about. So, and lastly, I'd like to recognize the employees of the nursing home for doing the sacrifices that they have done. I've not heard a lot of credence given to them. And I know they've taken a big hit, and this is going to hurt some of them very hard. $4,000 to $10,000 a year, depending on the hours worked. Thank you guys for what you've done. I appreciate it, and I know the families do too. Thank you.
I also have a request from Christy Cernahouse, and then in parentheses, the letter to be read by Kim Dupree. So yes, I understand that. Christy, did you, I'm sorry, I do not personally know you. Do you want to speak, or did Kim take care of it?
She's not here.
Okay, so this is taken care of. Thank you. Supervisors, we have in front of us a resolution regarding the health center business plan. This is presented to us on a motion by Supervisor Wentz and a second by Supervisor Horn. Discussion. Supervisor Malik.
As we sit here, I gather that the U.S. Senate is debating and perhaps voting, and maybe by now they've reached a decision on the federal budget, and I'm no expert. Probably several of you know more about this and can be helpful. But as I understand it, there are going to be almost immediate cuts of $1 trillion, and then before Thanksgiving, a bipartisan committee of 12 is supposed to propose another $1.4 trillion of cuts over a 10-year period. But if that committee does not propose something which the Congress adopts by Christmas, then automatically goes into effect cuts that are going to be $1.4 trillion, half to defense and half to other programs. If that's the basic outline, if I've got that part of it correct, and anybody feel free to correct me, but the changes will be significant. And I think that, as our earlier speakers at this podium indicated, we are operating in a period of great uncertainty. I am happy to add my applause to that of others to the wage and salary concessions that were offered and agreed by the union folks at our nursing home. And I'm also happy to join the chorus of people that praise our wonderful staff in achieving the 5-star award that they did recently. And I think if I could take any of the credit, I'd gladly grab it, but it's not for me to take. They did that, and they deserve to be recognized. The point I'm trying to make with these disparate threads is that we are on the threshold of a period of considerable uncertainty, and that strikes me as not being a good time to commit to new construction. And I guess that's the way I read this resolution, is new construction. It seems to me that, on the other hand, we had better be prudent and establish ourselves a baseline of operation. Hopefully it'll be exactly that trajectory, that budget, that proposal from, or that projection from the Larson Ellen firm or whatever, and it'll all come to pass. But until we have some months of experience with it, it seems to me that it would not be wise to just adopt this in the form that it's being offered, where it appears to be saying, we're going to commit now to 50 skilled care beds and 48 assisted living beds, and the remodeling of the current nursing home structure to house the health and human service employees. But there's one other thread of uncertainty, and I've said this before. That's the whole idea of, are we going to be hoteling some employees, that is, employees who will share an office on successive days or successive shifts or something? Are we going to make some meaningful attempt to have employees work from home, you know, with the enabling computers to do that and hookups and lines? I don't see how we can commit to how much space we need in a remodeled nursing home until we know the answers to those questions. So I don't think it's the right time to be adopting this. With all due respect to the Health and Human Services Board, which ought also to be thanked for having tried to advance the ball as best they can. I just think it's too early.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. I guess I'm curious with the resolution as stated, and knowing the discussions that's gone on so far in the past months on bringing resolutions forward, and we just got done passing, for instance, saying what resolutions should have. I was reading through the minutes of the Health and Human Services back in May, and they had even acknowledged that there should be a financial impact statement included, as well as what they're talking here in their fourth whereas, talking about researching the niche markets to meet the needs. We have no needs here, at least I have no information on what really justifies the needs to come to the conclusion of 48 or 50 bed nursing home and a 48 bed assisting or a 48 unit assisted living center. So how did they come to this number? And I guess I'm kind of surprised it isn't included with the resolution.
Chair will call on anyone from the HHS committee that wishes to respond to the supervisor.
I think probably Fred or Frank would be the ones to respond to that.
Fred, do you want to respond to the inquiries made by Supervisor Hermsen?
Over the course of the last several months, the Health and Human Services Board looked at a variety of business scenarios, and this document may look somewhat familiar to you as supervisors, and ultimately picked the 50-bed facility as the most financially advantageous model, and the 48 assisted living, the 48 unit assisted living was based on market study data that was collected to look at what is the capacity in the community for expanding assisted living. So I think while there may be many more factors, that I would boil it down to the two primary factors that were looked at by the committee probably 2 months ago.
Fred, was there, but you didn't include that report with this resolution as far as, you know, how did you come to I think from what I remember seeing in this report on the 50-bed assisted living facility, it seemed that what was taken was the one that had the least dramatic financial impact to the county. That was kind of looked like where you were finding a break point where they had the least impact, even though it was still a losing proposition. Where I'm curious in though is how you came up with the number of 48-bed assisted living, because, well, we heard from the public today the silver tsunami, yet we're going down on beds. If we got this silver tsunami coming, I'm surprised we're not going to a 150-bed unit. And the same thing goes with the assisted living center. How many units have you got in New Richmond that are dealing with assisted living, and what are you competing against? If you say there's a need for 48, I guess I'm really curious what that's based on, and where the cost comparative is going to come in compared to the other people that we're competing against in the private sector.
I should have taken notes on all of the questions, so I'll try to hit some of the high points. Again, I think the 50-bed looked at a variety of factors, current census, what was the most financially viable option. Again, when you look at a 50-bed facility, if the county were to build new, we have the opportunity to apply for property incentives, which in discussions with our professional association, they have indicated that for those facilities that have a plan approved that's innovative, part of your reimbursement for Medicaid days, you can get as much as $10 a day more. So for your bricks and mortar, for your capital expenses, you get reimbursed as part of your Medicaid rate. In addition, when you're at 50 beds and lower, you can get an enhanced reimbursement because there's a certain amount of overhead for nursing homes that whether you're a 50-bed or a 150-bed facility, you're going to have. So again, that could be as much as $10 additional revenue that could come in to our skilled care center based on Medicaid days. So again, on the 50-bed side, it was primarily looking at what could we do today that might get us in a better financial situation, and what can we do today to still stay a provider in the area. Now, if the county were to decide to build a new facility, there's nothing that would prohibit the county potentially in the future when the silver tsunami hits, that many people have talked about here, and capacity in the county for providing skilled care, we can't keep up. You build a structure or you work with a structure that allows expansion. Now, there's a whole lot of steps that would need to be done, and today the state does not, you can't just go out and add nursing home beds without a lot of work through state approval. So right now, adding beds or going to 150 beds would seem impractical, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't do that in the future or be available in the future. Again, a county board decision. I don't know today how many beds are available in the New Richmond area for assisted living. What I do know is we did a market study, looked at what is the opportunity that's available for expanding, and it was that number of 48 units that were more in the lower to moderate income range. So that's what the Health and Human Service Board, I think, looked at and built as a foundation to put this resolution together today. And again, Steve, I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but I'm trying to hit the high points, and if I missed something.
I guess the only thing, here's where I'm coming at with my thought process in doing this. If there truly is a need, and I'm not going to argue one way or again, for or against the need, but let's just say that we do need assisted living units. As a county, are we better off spending money for capital to have these things built and run by us Or are we better off to define the need as far as setting a guideline of income and whatnot, and turning around and letting the people who need that go wherever they want instead of forcing them to go to a specific location? That's my concern here, is that we're kind of pigeonholing ourselves into a spot. Well, we're going to provide 48 units of assisted living, but the people better want to live there. And I don't agree with that. If we're going to provide assistance to the county, then why not let them go anywhere they want? So there's my mindset.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. I don't see on this resolution any of the reviews that we have just today required of resolutions, and I would like to ask our Corporation Counsel if he has reviewed this resolution.
I have to admit, I don't recall that I did. But I can't say for sure. The reason I say that is because the therefore section, the language seems a little unclear to me, and I could have perhaps suggested stating it in a different way than it was to make it more clear as to what the intent is. But again, I may have.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. That goes right to the point of my concern. The therefore be it resolved. I would like to know from the Corporation Counsel if he today has an opinion about that paragraph. Does this paragraph, in his opinion, mean that this resolution is advisory for this board? Or does this paragraph mean that this resolution is binding on this board? Makes a big difference to me.
This is how I read it, and there could be 30 different opinions in this room today. So I'm not saying this is how it reads, I'm saying this is how I read it. I read it that it directs all future county planning for facilities to be based around a new nursing home and assisted living facility. That any planning the county does in the future has to include these two facilities.
I'm going to say this out loud. I'm wondering, would it be appropriate to have the HHS committee respond to that paragraph and what their expectation is? Because I share the same confusion as to what we're being asked to do. Would that be appropriate, in your opinion? At this point, then, the chair is going to invite the HHS committee to respond to their expectation as to what the now therefore be it resolved really means. What is being asked of the county board? And anyone from the committee can weigh in.
Thank you, Vice Board Chair. I guess maybe I'll start off with maybe a more broader question is, so when this resolution was passed at the Health and Human Services Board and forwarded on, I guess, so why didn't this go through Corp Council and some of the other reviews that it should have?
I can't respond to that. I don't.
Requested.
Fred, do you have any anecdotal information for us with respect to the process that was entered into and the result of the passage of this resolution at the committee and subsequent actions that got it to this point?
I have to apologize. I was looking at the resolution when some of the discussion happened, and I missed the basis of the question. So if you can...
Well, I'll have Supervisor Horn rephrase.
So when the Health and Human Services Board passed the resolution, and as other supervisors have pointed out, that evidently it hasn't gone through some of the reviews that Corp Council review, some of the economic impact reviews. Is there, I guess, what steps should have been taken, or the board should have taken, to ensure that those reviews happened before it got to the full county board? Is there, I don't want to.
Now, my understanding is there has been some changes in protocol around resolutions to include a fiscal impact statement, and I believe this resolution was done before those changes occurred. And my recollection in terms of putting this resolution together is Frank and I did meet with Greg and review it, but again, in the review as to form, Greg's signature is not there, so I don't know the details of why that is not, why that didn't happen. All I can tell you is in the process of reviewing this, we had some meetings to deal specifically with the resolution, and that's my recollection of the events as they unfolded prior to today.
And maybe since you're here on a microphone, I'll throw maybe a follow-up question, if I may. So is the nursing facilities, is it off the levy as of today with the new contract?
The 2012 proposed budget is still in works, and I would indicate that our goal is to take the savings from the negotiations and move the facility to zero levy for 2012. To me, the real question comes down to ultimately a clear, definitive answer on what zero levy means, because we have operational costs, we have depreciation expense, we have prior year carryover. So without much more specific definition, what we're looking to bring forward is a budget. Our goal is to bring forth a budget that is zero on operations, and hopefully being able to include capital expenses that would be zero on levy as well. Now, with that, we know that we have $202,000 of carryover from the audited numbers in 2010 that will carry over into the 2012 budget. There's I think a year skip. So again, I'm not trying to make it complicated, but I think at some point clarity around zero levy is an important conversation for this board to decide upon. But for us, without specific clarity, we're working on trying to get to zero operations and levy, and we see that as achievable.
My memory has been refreshed. I have reviewed the resolution, and I'm going to admit to the county board today that if the therefore paragraph was clear to me before, it's not clear to me today. So I apologize for the mistake.
Supervisor Marzov. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, Greg, as I look at the now therefore paragraph, there are four components clearly articulated. The first is to pursue future facility plans that include a 50-bed new skilled care facility. The second portion is a new 48-unit assisted living building. The third component, repurpose and remodel the current nursing home portion of the health center, because where Health and Human Services is presently, that building is in disrepair, and the intent of this is to move those personnel into what is now the nursing home, which is in better condition. And the fourth component is a summary component to direct the ad hoc facility committee to submit its recommendation to the county board. I think that's patently clear, these four components to this whereas, to this therefore.
Supervisor Sather.
I just also have a point of clarification. Now, I want to preempt it by saying that when we were elected, we're supposed to work in the best interest of the entire county. And one of the things we need to be cognizant of is the financial well-being is a priority, I think, in taking care of the county. But I have a question on the fifth whereas. It says they dealt with the bargaining unit because they want to enable the continued operation of the health center without county levy. So I'm assuming the goal is to continue to operate now and in the future without county levy. And if we're going to not have county levy, who's going to build this building? Is it going to be us, or are we going to work with some volunteer committee that's going to be responsible for the debt? And what funds are we going to use? I mean, if we're going to build something, it's going to cost us money. That's levy dollars. I guess I'm not sure. How are they, whether it's us or somebody else, do that to stay off the levy if we have to build something? I don't think this is very clear. I kind of agree with Buck. This is not the time to invest in or spend a lot of money when everything is so unclear. I don't know if we even should continue to deal with this resolution.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. I don't believe that we got an answer to your request to the Health and Human Services Board committee members about what their intention is with this resolution and the therefore be it resolved. Could I ask that you maybe restate your question?
I think the intent of the resolution was that we were asking the county board, bringing forth the information that we have in the past through the different studies that Lars and Allen has done. We were asking the county board to approve a 50-bed facility and a 48-bed assisted living. Therefore, that would go from this board then, the preliminary voting after it was done would go then to the Facilities Planning Commission. The Facilities Planning Group would then bring back its recommendations to this board. That's my understanding of this.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Wentz. Based on your comments, then I have a question. Under this resolution, would the Facilities Planning Committee have the option of not recommending this particular scenario?
That I can't answer. I don't know. I'm not versed well enough in the way things work in the law to know if that would be part of it. I don't know. Ray, could you answer?
That doesn't appear to be possible under the language of the resolution. It says that they will include plans for it. It doesn't say that they'll research the idea of building new facilities. It says they will plan for them. So again, there could be 30 different opinions, but it sounds to me like the actual building plans would be brought back to the county board for future consideration.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. Included in this resolution is the remodeling of the current nursing home if this resolution were to pass and if we were to decide to build these buildings. Has the Health and Human Services Board investigated what it might cost to remodel that nursing home building for HHS staff use?
I think at different times there have been bits and pieces that we have researched and we've looked into it, but no, we do not have any solid figures on what it would cost to move the Health and Human Services into that area. But knowing that we have the individual rooms and some of the other areas that would be conducive to our Health and Human Services area, we're hoping that that would be workable. But we have no definite figures to my knowledge.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you. That dismays me a bit, Supervisor Wentz, because the May 18th minutes of the Health and Human Services Board, there's a clear statement that in the future, all resolutions must include fiscal impact, human resource impact, and legal impact. So I'm concerned that the Health and Human Services Board is coming to this county board with a resolution that invites us to commit to do these particular actions without knowing what it's going to cost us. I'm very concerned about that, personally, and for the county down the road.
Supervisor Malik.
I have a little different take on this. Somebody to invite you all to think about. Somebody made a request that we be given information on the nursing home vacancies, and it was provided to us. And I see that in this whole county, the 9 skilled care facilities had 75 bed vacancies in July of this year, and over the last 4 years, or 4 months, I added those up and took the average. The average vacancies were 84. As you know, our capacity, our licensed capacity is 72 at the nursing home. And so it does seem perfectly clear that if we were to build a 50-bed skilled care facility to replace our current 72 beds, we should have absolutely no trouble. Well, I'm not sure exactly what inference to draw from that. I mean, one implication is that there's no need at all for 72 beds. There would still be an excess of 3 this current month, but it would not have worked in some of the previous months. Well, it's all kind of up in the air. I continue to think, as I said at the beginning, we ought to have some months of practical experience at running under our new contract, our new labor contract. We are making some quite significant changes. The employees have said they will take less in salary and benefits. And a lot of it had to do with shift pay, you know. And with the best of intentions, they may, as they start to do that, find it's not sustainable. It may be that we will have folks choosing to retire, for instance, and a variety of things that could happen on the employment side. And then what's going to happen with the state budget and the federal budget as it plays through to us may throw all the estimates that Larson Allen made into disarray. Be nice to have this resolved and done, but I don't think this is the time to make a commitment to construction.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. To tag on with Supervisor Malik on his numbers, what we're failing to also recognize is the additional 100 beds that are sitting in the hospitals open, that are shown in there. So I believe we have quite a bit of capacity there from that standpoint. The other question I've got, and maybe this will go back to Corp Counsel for an opinion, since it's mentioned in the resolution on the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth whereas, again, about this resolution 34 that was passed at a previous board meeting. It says there that, and I guess this Corp Counsel, I'd like to know if this is binding. In the now therefore be it resolved that the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors directs the Administration Committee to pursue negotiations pertaining to wage and fringe benefits with the health center employees, bargaining unit to enable the continued operation of health care without county levy. And that passed unanimously on this board. Does that mean that coming up for our 2012, we are bound that there will be no county levy dollars going towards that, towards the nursing home?
That's how I read that language. Going forward into the future, the operation of the health center is done without county levy.
Supervisor Norton-Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. I have something I want to read, and I'm going to ask permission to do this because I think it's time we bring this to a resolution of some kind on this resolution. I move we table this resolution until August 2012 St. Croix County Board meeting for these following reasons. First reason is the resolution seems premature in its scope. At this time, we have no established historical financial data concerning potential labor savings predicted to be achieved under the recently approved contract with the nursing home union. By July 2012, we will have a one-year history of nursing home financial operations under the aforementioned contract. Second item is, the latest Larson Allen study, which I have here, for this project indicates a continued need for levy dollars to be able to come to a break-even point for the 50-bed, 48-bed option. We need to establish the actual labor savings under the current contract in order to make an appropriate financial decision on this concept, remembering that the contract will expire for certain in 2013. The third item, we have not utilized the ad hoc building committee facilities information and research concerning our current space utilization. That study presents options for space utilization that need to be further studied and implemented. Until we plan for how we use our current facilities, we ought not be planning for buildings we might not actually need in order to provide services to county residents. Fourth item, we are uncertain of the ramifications of both the state and federal budget cuts currently under consideration. Postponing this resolution until August 2012 will provide the time necessary to ascertain potential Medicaid reimbursements and other budget considerations, which would prove helpful in projections concerning this proposed project and its viability for the future. And the fifth one is, we have no financial, legal, or human resource information for this resolution. Postponing until August 2012 will allow time to gather all of that information. And I move again that we table this resolution until the August 2012 St. Croix County Board meeting.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second? Second from Reb Holtz. A motion to table is a priority motion. It is not debatable.
The reasons for passing or not passing it are debatable, but not the main motion. Issues aren't debatable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That's putting a sharp point on it, but essentially it's, we're not going to debate whether or not we're going to move to table, but the reasons could be debated. Is there any discussion on the reasons to postpone? Supervisor Marzov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sharon, you indicated that the Larson Allen study was completed and indicates that we can't operate without levy dollars. However, it's my understanding that that study was completed prior to the concessions having been made for wage and benefits by the nursing home employees. Therefore, that, to that extent, that invalidates the study.
Can I respond to that, Board Chair?
Yes, you can respond to that because that would be the reasons.
Okay. I have in front of me the latest study from Larson Allen. It's for a 50-bed new nursing home and a 48-bed assisted living project with reduced tax levy. In the year 2015, this document indicates no tax levy, but it still indicates that we will have an $894,000 no tax levy. Now, as I recall the contracts that we voted on, I believe last month, we were going to save $550,000 on the nursing home union contract. Please correct me if I'm incorrect. If I subtract $550,000 from Larson Allen's projected $894,000 loss, we still would have $344,000 that would have to come from levy dollars in 2015 for a new 50-bed, 48-bed unit. Having said that, the depreciation and amortization on this document is, I don't know how many years it was based on. It probably is 50. Most IRS requirements require that a building of this type be depreciated over at least 50 years. Our bond on this is projected to be 30 years at 4.5%. Something doesn't add up for the capital that's going to be needed to pay the principal of this loan. This document does include interest expense. I'll state again that the document says to me that with the $550,000 savings that are to be acquired, potentially to be acquired in our new contract, we would still be on the levy with this project in 2015, and that would be about when it might be up and running.
Supervisor Malik.
I wanted to take note of the joint letter that we've had from the chairs of the surrounding municipal units of government, who all call on the St. Croix County Board to continue the operation of the nursing home. They don't address whether to build new buildings, but they call on us for continuation. And I would also note that in all of the prior discussion, there has been no suggestion about closing the nursing home or selling the nursing home or those kinds of options. So the world of users and potential patients and the employees should take comfort from the concept, I think, that even if this tabling motion passes, that does not mean that there's any proposal to close the nursing home before the end of the term of the labor union contract, for example.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'd like to reiterate what Supervisor Malik has said. It would seem that it would only be fair and appropriate for this board to give the nursing home staff and the union employees with the new contract an opportunity for a one-year window to see what they can accomplish with the wage restructuring, not the wage restructuring, the cost restructuring in the new contract. That is the purpose of my motion to table this resolution, that we give them a year to see what they do.
Any more discussion on the reasons to table? Seeing none, then we will proceed to vote. Motion to table is a priority motion. And this comes to us with a motion from Supervisor Norton Baumann, second on the motion to table from Supervisor Rebholz. If you vote in the affirmative on this resolution would be tabled until a date specific, and that being consistent with the resolution, August of next year. Everyone clear? Proceed to vote. And the resolution is tabled. Supervisors, that completes our agenda. There are a couple of announcements for the good of the order. I remind you that on the 16th of August at 1 o'clock, we will assemble as a committee of the whole. Specifically, we'll be dealing that day with strategic planning and beginning the discussion for this strategic planning. The administration committee has been moved from Monday the 15th to Tuesday the 16th to try and combine meetings on one day. So administration will meet at 8:30 on Tuesday the 16th, committee of the whole at 1 o'clock. But also remind you that on August 25th, we will be hosting a meet and greet to introduce new County Administrator Pat Thompson to other local units of government, and we have invited the county mayors, village presidents, and town board chairs, and those of their associates that they wish to bring to a meet and greet at the Orchard Restaurant in Baldwin. This will be informal. There'll be no business conducted, and therefore it will not require it be posted as an open meeting. All supervisors are invited to attend, but this, I would stress, is an informal, non-business meeting, and so we will not be paying per diems. You're invited to be there, but you're not going to get paid. Third thing is, I would remind people of the WCA conference that is coming up in September. The date, the window of opportunity for a discounted reservation expired yesterday. Those of you who have not turned your name into Cindy still could attend, but it no longer qualifies for a discount. We do have a smaller number than normally that have indicated their participation. Those of you that have indicated to Cindy that you do plan to attend, I would encourage you to look very carefully at the breakout sessions, especially since there'll be fewer of us attending. And as much as possible, I would like to spread our participation out over as many of the breakout sessions as possible. It still might be that based on interests, 2 supervisors may want to go to the same session. I mean, there's nothing heavy-handed about this. I just like to get as many sessions covered as possible. So informally, maybe we can look at who's attending what and just try and spread ourselves out. Finally, Michelle Petrick has copies of the audit that are available for administration committee members in advance of the meeting on the 16th, and pick up those from Michelle before you leave. Yes, go ahead.
I have nothing to report for rezonings or any correspondence, but this is the last month I'll ask for this. I need Community Development Committee members and Administration Committee members to come forward and sign the resolutions and ordinances. Thanks.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.